Can we have Jen Rumza and a big round of applause to welcome Jen?
In my early 20s, I was a big traveler. I liked to travel to really remote places, and I backpacked in Africa. And I found myself in Malawi. I was on an island. I was in the middle of Lake Malawi. And I was having an amazing time. I was in paradise. And I was traveling with a couple of people who I had picked up along the way. When you're a single woman traveling, you tend to pick up other single women traveling. So there were three of us, Milena, Shelley, and I. We were a group, and we were having a great time. We had trekked all the way around the island. We met people who had never seen white people before, and it was great. And just before I was going to leave the island, there was a man who was dying of malaria. So I thought this man is, could very well be on his last legs. He was very tall, very thin. He was very pale. He couldn't walk. He was feverish. And I happened to have malaria medication with me. I wasn't taking the prophylactic that you take every week because it kind of made me kooky. But I had this packet that I knew that if I ever got malaria, I could take it, get to a hospital, and I would be fine. So the day before we leave, he's sick. And I think to myself, I'm getting on the ferry the next day. I'm going to be on the mainland. I can get more medication. It's fine. I'm going to give him my malaria medication. So I did. I gave him my medication, and he got well. I mean, he noticeably, within hours, he was better. So that's the really good news. We got on the ferry the next day, and we headed to the mainland, and the ferry that we were on stopped, and there was another island. And I knew about this island. It was called Chizumulu. And I knew about it, but I didn't think anybody lived on it. And being the adventurer that I was, I thought we should try to go there. So Milena and Shelley were really on board with this. We went to the captain. We said, what's it going to take? Can we go to this island? He said, well, yeah, I guess we can extend your ticket. You'll be there for 3 days. There's a guest house. There's one restaurant. And we'll see you in 3 days. So we get on the rowboat. We go to the island. Incredibly interesting place. I was an anthropology major, and I was just like, wow, this is like a microcosm of people in the middle of this lake in the middle of Africa. So I was fascinated. We ended up at the one restaurant overlooking the village, and all of a sudden, I get a really bad headache, really bad. And I thought to my first thought, of course, was, I'm getting malaria. And then my second thought was, Shelley had said I would never give my malaria medication away to anybody. So I was like, I am fucked. So what did I do? I immediately just went into denial. I was like, okay, it's not malaria. I'm just gonna have a bad headache. It's fine. I'll just go back to the room. Well, I woke up the next morning, and I was in a feverish sweat, and I was achy all over, and I was there for 3 days. And I thought, I don't know what's going to happen to me. I'm just going to have to, sweat this one out. Well, Milena and Shelley went out and cavorted with the villagers, and they got invited to a healing ritual that night, of all things. So they came back to the room, and they said, you have to come. Maybe you'll get better. Me being 22, me believing in everything possible, I said, okay, I'll rally. I'll get to this healing ritual. So they literally drag me through the forest, and we get to this little village, and there's a hut, maybe half the size of this room, thatched. And they take us to the back, and they put us on a little stage somewhat like this, but it's dirt floor, and there's drums all along the side. People start filling in, and the thatched roof kind of goes over the walls, so people are outside and literally looking in, and it's a big spectacle, and it's a big deal. And I thought, well, if the power of this room can heal me, then this is going to be a great thing. So the drums start, and these two women come down the aisle, and they're in half African garb and half Red Cross uniform. They have Red Crosses on white shirts, and they're dancing down, and they come and they start dancing in front of us, and there's dust going up everywhere, and the drums are going, and my headache's getting worse and worse, and I'm getting weaker and weaker. And finally I had to ask to be taken outside. So I go outside, they put me on this mat, and I'm kind of curled up in the fetal position, and And I open my eyes and I see around me, I see men crouched down and just staring at me. They're about 15 feet or so from me, and they're villagers, and they're just staring at me. I must have been quite a spectacle laying there. And eventually, okay, I'm getting there. Eventually, the guest house owner comes out, and he takes me. He says, "Okay, come on, I'm going to take you home." So he's taking me through the forest, and I'm literally having to lean on him. And he says, "Oh, don't worry. We have aspen here." So then I thought, I'm really fucked. Takes me back to the guest house, and I literally don't remember the next 2 days. But what I do remember is getting up on that third morning, the day the ferry was coming, and I was conscious, and I had energy. I crawled to the water. I got in the water. I cleaned myself. And I remembered that Shelley had come to me the night before, and she had given me her pills. And so I was well enough to get on the ferry. They took really good care of me on the ferry. They had blankets and a cot. They had an ambulance there at the dock when I got off. I was in the hospital for a few days. Shelley and Melina stayed in the town while I was in the hospital. And eventually we traveled together again. And we went to the next remote place. So all was well. Thanks.